The little boy shouted, "The bat-biting man," at Ozzy Osbourne. Then everyone started mocking him. The streets of Camden, London, pulsed with their usual symphony. The hiss of espresso machines, the clatter of footsteps on wet cobblestones, laughter spilling from tattoo parlors and record shops. But among the neon signs and the rising fog, a silence began to form, rippling through the noise like a sudden intake of breath. "Look, it's him, the bat-biting man." The shout came from a child, a thin-framed boy with freckles and messy red hair, pointing across the street with the urgency of discovery. Heads turned, phones came out, and there, walking slowly past the window of a vintage vinyl shop, was Ozzy Osbourne, black coat brushing the rain, sunglasses reflecting the street's chaos. People froze. Some laughed, some gasped, and others whispered the name that had followed him for 40 years. "The bat-biting man." Ozzy's jaw tightened slightly. His walk was uneven that day, the aftermath of another hospital visit, another injection that steadied his shaking hands but left him exhausted. His body ached. His thoughts drifted between fatigue and the familiar loneliness that came when the lights were gone and the crowd had vanished. Before we start the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And if you love real emotional stories inspired by legends, don't forget to hit subscribe to Voices of Darkness and share this story with your friends. Now, let's begin. He adjusted his glasses, hoping to pass unseen. But recognition spreads faster than shadow in a city that feeds on spectacle. "Oi, Ozzy, do the bat thing," someone shouted. Another voice, "Sing Crazy Train, mate." Laughter erupted. The old rock myth, revived again in the middle of a London street. But before the noise could grow cruel, a woman's firm voice cut through. "Leave the man alone," she snapped. The crowd hesitated. It was a nurse, still in her hospital scrubs, her eyes stern yet kind. "This man received treatment today. Show some respect." Ozzy paused. He recognized her, the same nurse who had given him his injection earlier that afternoon. He gave her a grateful nod, a small, tired smile, and for a fleeting second the noise faded into something human again. He just wanted a quiet coffee. Just an hour of normal life without the label, without the legend. But fate had other plans. Across the street, the little boy tugged on his mother's hand, voice trembling with excitement. "Mom, it's really him. The man Dad told me about. His name was Thomas, 10 years old. His father, Marcus, had been a lifelong Black Sabbath fan, the kind who kept vinyls framed like family portraits. He'd told his son stories about a wild man who'd turned darkness into music, about how paranoid saved his teenage years, and how changes helped him mourn his mother's death. But for Thomas, one story had stuck. The bat. Now, seeing the man from those tales alive walking before him was like watching a myth step out of bedtime stories. The crowd began to move again, but the tone had shifted, less mockery, more reverence. Ozzy waved, smiled, even posed for a few selfies, his hands trembling just enough that the flashes caught it. Inside, he felt the same fatigue that never really left him. But the showman in him, the eternal performer, refused to disappear. And then came a small voice cutting through the murmurs. "Mr. Osbourne, can I ask you something?" Ozzy turned. The boy had slipped through the legs of strangers and stood now, face flushed, eyes shining. "Of course, lad," Ozzy said softly, bending down to meet his gaze. "What would you like to ask?" The crowd leaned in, drawn by the innocence of the moment. "Did you really bite the head off a bat?" Thomas asked, voice trembling between fear and wonder. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Phones tilted upward again, but Ozzy didn't laugh. His smile faded, replaced by something gentler, the kind of truth that comes from years of carrying your own myth. "You know, lad," he said in that heavy Birmingham accent, "that was an accident. I didn't know the thing thrown on stage was real. Thought it was a toy, you see. Sometimes the mistakes we make become the things that define us." Thomas blinked. "Weren't you scared?" "Didn't it bite you back?" Ozzy nodded, a sad smile touching his lips. I was scared. Went to hospital that same night. Got rabies shots. But sometimes in life, lad, you have to face the things you're afraid of. My life's been a lot of that. Falling down, getting back up again. The street was silent now. Even the shopkeeper at the record store leaned out to listen. What had started as mockery was becoming something else entirely. A connection, a moment of truth shared between generations. Marcus and his wife had come closer now, watching their son speak to his hero. And for the first time that day, Ozzy's tired eyes softened with a familiar spark. The same glimmer that once burned in the heart of a boy named John Michael Osbourne, who had dreamed of escaping the gray factories of Birmingham through music. "You've got that same light in your eyes, lad," Ozzy said quietly. "Don't ever lose it," Thomas smiled shyly. "My dad says you were poor and worked in a slaughterhouse before you became a rock star. Is that true?" Ozzy chuckled, a low, raspy laugh that broke the heaviness for a moment. "Every bit of it. Aston, that's where I'm from. Poor as dirt. Could barely read or write. Worked in a slaughterhouse, covered in blood every day. But when I heard the Beatles on the radio, something inside me changed. I knew right then I had to sing, I had to find my voice." As he spoke, the street seemed to fade, replaced by ghostly echoes of 1960s Birmingham. Smoke, sweat, laughter in factory pubs, and the sound of metal turning into music. "When we formed Black Sabbath," he continued, "we were just four lads with nothing to lose. Tony had his fingertips cut off in a factory. Geezer lost his job. We didn't have money, but we had sound, and that sound saved us." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. "Mr. Osbourne, your music saved me too." Ozzy turned to him, not as a celebrity, but as a man. "That's what it's all about, mate. Music connects people, through pain, joy, madness. It makes us human." No one cheered. No one shouted. They just listened. The bat-biting man had become something far greater. A teacher, a survivor, a mirror. As the evening light turned amber, Thomas pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "Mr. Osbourne, I drew something for you," he said shyly. He opened it. The drawing showed Ozzy on stage, microphone in hand, surrounded by bats, not attacking him but flying around him like guardians of darkness. Ozzy stared at it for a long time. His eyes glistened. "This is beautiful, lad. You're right, my songs are dark because life can be dark, but there's always light if you look close enough." He took the pen and signed his name, then paused and beneath it wrote, "Thomas, you can see light even in darkness. That's the greatest power in life. Ozzy Osbourne." Thomas hugged the notebook to his chest. "Thank you, Mr. Osbourne. When I grow up, I want to be a musician too, like you." Ozzy smiled faintly. "Don't be like me, lad. Be yourself. Find your own darkness and your own light. That's where your story lives." The crowd began to disperse, silent and thoughtful. The myth had turned human. But destiny wasn't done with this day, not yet. Marcus, voice shaking, said quietly, "Mr. Osbourne, there's something else I want to show you." The nurse from earlier lingered by the curb, arms folded, watching like a quiet guardian. The air had turned thin and metallic. A bus sighed to a stop. Doors opening like a yawn, then rolled on. Camden's clatter returned in cautious pieces. The hiss of milk wands, a busker retuning a guitar, a raven complaining from a chimney pot. "Let's get off the street," Ozzy said gently. "Too many echoes out here." They ducked into a narrow cafe that smelled of espresso and rain-soaked wool. The owner, a silver-haired woman with a Ramones pin and a don't mess about stare, recognized Ozzy, went pale for a heartbeat, then merely nodded like she'd been expecting him all week. She cleared a corner booth by the window with the efficiency of a stagehand. No photos, no fuss. Marcus, his wife, and Thomas slid in opposite Ozzy. The nurse took a takeaway tea and stayed by the door, as if shepherding the afternoon to safer ground. Ozzy sat carefully, fighting the tremor that wanted to speak before he did. He placed both hands around the warm mug and let the heat travel into his bones. For a long breath, they listened to the cafe's small orchestra, the clink of cups, the soft scrape of a chair, a needle drop from the shop next door, someone putting on an old record that crackled like rain on a tin roof. "All right, lad," Ozzy said to Thomas, that old brummy lilt coming round like a well-worn chorus. "Ask me the thing you really want to know." Thomas frowned, surprised. I already did." "You asked about a bat," Ozzy said with a wink. "That's the crowd's question. What's yours?" The boy's freckles bunched as he thought. Then quietly, "How do you keep going when you're scared?" The cafe stilled. Even the milk wand seemed to bow its head. Ozzy leaned back. The window beside him reflected a man he recognized and did not. A legendary mask over a soft, tired human face. His voice lowered to the register he used for backstage truths. "I used to think courage was loud," he said, shouting down the fear. "But it's not, it's turning up again. Even after you've been a ghost in your own bones. Fear's a crafty thing, it doesn't shout either. It whispers. You're finished, sit down. And you've got to whisper back, not today." He glanced at Marcus. "Your dad knows that song." Marcus nodded, eyes wet but steady. "Paranoid was the first record that made me feel less alone." "Me too," Ozzy said. "Except I was on it." A ripple of laughter loosened the room. The tension exhaled. Ozzy looked at Thomas. "When I was your age, school was a battlefield. Couldn't focus. Letters danced like moths. Teachers thought I was thick as a brick. I nicked a bit, worked a lot, and felt small nearly all the time. Then one day I hear the Beatles on a cheap radio in the world. Lifted. Like somebody cracked a window in a smoky room. That sound told me, there's a door out of here, kid. It won't open easy, but it's there." He traced a circle on the mug with his thumb, stirring a small galaxy in the tea. "I started singing because I didn't know how to be heard any other way. When we put Sabbath together, it wasn't pretty or polished. It was a bruise you could dance to. Tony, his fingers were wrecked from the factory and he made new ones out of determination. That sound, heavy as a storm door, came from pain and from refusing to quit." Thomas listened like he was collecting treasure. "So the dark parts helped make the music?" "The dark parts are music," Ozzy said. "But you've got to carry a candle in it, else it swallows you. People think the stage makes you big. Sometimes it makes you hollow. You need people, proper people, to keep the pilot light on. Bandmates, partners, nurses who tell a crowd to pack it in." The nurse smiled into her cup. Marcus cleared his throat, nerves tightening his voice. "Mr. Ozzy, I've tried to teach Thomas that music isn't about idols. It's about making a bridge." "Amen," Ozzy said. "Build enough bridges, you end up with a place to live." The cafe owner set down a plate of biscuits like an offering to old gods. "On the house," she murmured, then drifted away. Ozzy studied the steam curling off his mug. "You asked how to keep going when you're scared. You make a little promise. Nothing dramatic. You say, 'I'll be there tomorrow.' That's it. You don't promise the moon. Just the morning. And then you cash it in, again and again." He looked at Thomas. "You play anything?" "A little guitar," Thomas admitted. "My fingers hurt. They're supposed to." Ozzy grinned. "It's your skin learning to stay." Silence for a beat. The record next door slipped into a chorus the world knew by heart. Marcus closed his eyes as if praying with his ears. Ozzy's smile thinned, the tremor in his hand returning like a tide. "Some days it's harder," he said quietly. "I won't lie to you. The body goes one way, the heart another, and you stand between like a traffic cop in a thunderstorm. You feel small again, like you did at school. And then," he tapped the boy's notebook, "something reminds you why you started. A drawing. A kid's question. A song that still fits." Thomas worked up a braver voice. "Do you ever regret the stories people tell about you?" Ozzy took his time. "Regret's a chair with no legs, lad. You can sit in it, but you'll fall on your arse. I've done things I wish I hadn't, said things, survived things I can't quite explain. But if I spend all day polishing the past, I'll miss the bit of light today's trying to hand me." He leaned in, conspiratorial. "Here's a secret, you don't fix your life all at once. You just make one good choice while the kettle's on, then another when it whistles." Marcus's wife squeezed Thomas's shoulder. "Hear that?" "I do," Thomas said. "It's like learning a song. One note at a time." Ozzy beamed. "Now you're talking." The bell over the cafe door tinkled as someone left, letting in a slender blade of cold air. The nurse shifted, then stepped toward the table, voice soft. "Excuse me." He won't say it, but he needs to rest soon. Ozzy nodded gratefully. "Right you are," Marcus swallowed. The moment had grown heavy with the thing he'd been carrying. He pulled his phone from his coat, holding it as if it were a relic that could sing. "Ozzy, there's something I hope to show you. If you've got it in you." The cafe seemed to lean closer. He unlocked the screen and turned it around. A hospital room. A small boy with no hair under a knitted beanie the color of sunrise. Eyes too bright for such a pale face. He was smiling into a plastic microphone, singing soft and stubborn, "I'm just a dreamer, I dream my life away." The phone's tinny speaker bled courage into the booth. Thomas bit his lip. The nurse's hand rose to her throat. That's my nephew, Marcus said. Leo, he says your songs make the chemo days feel shorter. Says if you can survive being the bat-bitting man, he can survive this. Ozzy closed his eyes, and in the dark behind them he saw two boys at once. The one on the screen, small and fierce, and another long ago in Aston who'd promised himself he'd find a door out of the smoke. The tremor in his hand steadied as if the body understood the assignment. When he opened his eyes, they shone wet but steady. Where is he? Great Ormond Street, Marcus said. He had a rough round this week, but he's still singing. Ozzy nodded once as if agreeing to a contract that needed no paper. He wiped his fingers on a napkin, then reached across the table and took Marcus's phone with ceremonious care. All right, he said, breath fogging the glass a little. Let's make him a promise worth keeping. He looked to Thomas. You ready to help me, lad? Thomas straightened like a soldier.
What do I do?
Hold the booth quiet, Ozzy said, half-smile returning. Sometimes silence is the best instrument. He angled the camera, framed his own face with the window's winter light, and waited for the room and his heartbeat to settle into tempo. The nurse stood by like a stage manager counting them in. 3, 2, 1. Ozzy pressed record. Leo, he said, voice low as a lullaby and rough as a road. It's Ozzy. People call me a lot of things. Today I'm just a bloke who's proud of you. He stopped, not because he'd lost the thread, but because he wanted the next words to land like a hand finding another in the dark. Your uncle showed me your song, he went on. I heard all the brave notes. I know hospitals. I know long nights. I know fear that tries to sing louder than you. But here's what I've learned. Fear's a cover band. You're the headliner. He smiled, the mask gone, the man remaining. I've fallen down more times than I care to count. But I got up. Not because I'm magic. Because the music inside wouldn't shut up. I can hear yours from here, Leo. It's loud. It's beautiful. He paused. The cafe was a cathedral. I'm making you a promise, he said. When you're ready, when you've done your fighting and the doctors say you're good, we'll stand together, you and me, and sing Dreamer. I'll hold the harmony if you take the melody, deal? He lifted the phone slightly as if to shake hands through the lens. Then he ended the recording, but not the moment. No one spoke for a measure or two. Marcus took the phone with both hands as if it had changed temperature. Thank you, he said, the words breaking like a wave. You don't know what that will... I do, Ozzy said softly. I've lived on promises like that. He turned to Thomas. And as for you, lad, bring your guitar by someday when the fingers don't hurt so much. We'll talk about songs with corners and songs that are circles. You'll need both. Thomas nodded, tears shining but unshed. I won't forget. Good, Ozzy said. Neither will I. Outside, Camden continued its carnival. Inside, time had stopped long enough to let three hearts learn a new rhythm. The nurse cleared her throat, duty calling like a quiet bell. All right, Ozzy said, rising carefully. I've borrowed enough of your day. He took a slow breath, steadying the world. The cafe owner, still pretending not to listen, slid a brown paper bag across the counter. For the road, she said. It smelled of lemon biscuits and a promise not to tell. Ozzy nodded his thanks. At the door, he looked back once more at the boy, the father, the drawing, the phone carrying a fragile sunbeam toward Great Ormond Street. He tipped 2 fingers from his temple, a salute from one survivor to 3 more. Keep the candle lit, he said. The bell tinkled as he stepped into the cooling afternoon, the city's noise folding around him like an old coat. Behind him, Marcus exhaled for the first time in an hour. Thomas opened his notebook to the page with the bats that weren't monsters anymore. The nurse sipped her tea and just this once allowed herself a smile big enough to touch the edge of the day. Outside, Ozzy adjusted his glasses, drew his collar up, and began to walk. Not faster, not slower, just forward, one good choice while the kettle's on. Psst. If this story moved you, tap subscribe to Voices of Darkness and share it with a friend who needs a little light today.